I told you I had a great guest, and you get lucky sometimes. And I think I got lucky. I'm going to ask when it comes on if it's just because I'm from St. Louis, but we'll find out. Nonetheless, he had an interesting week. I'm so thrilled to invite, Brad Lanner to the show. You may know him as the New York City Comptroller, currently running for mayor, and currently was detained by ICE this week. So let's welcome Brad to the show. It's great to have him.
To be on, too late to cancel. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, it's great to have. I know you're busy. Voting starts in 2 days, right, Brad?
It's underway now, actually.
Oh,
We have early voting here. Election day is Tuesday,
yeah.
but there's early voting that started last weekend. And so tens of thousands of people are voting today and tomorrow. Then Monday we take off, and Tuesday's election day.
Man, I'll tell you what, and you've got ranked choice voting, and you've done you partnered with one of your opponents a little bit I'm sure our viewer, a lot of folks don't have ranked choice voting. I'm sure they're confused by that. Can you explain ranked choice voting a little bit for our national audience and what your plans are?
Yeah. So ranked choice voting here means you can rank up to 5 candidates. And in some ways, it's
Mhm.
pretty simple. You just put number one, the person you most would like to be mayor, and then number
Yeah,
two, three, four, five, and you don't have to vote for people you don't want. And what that means is there's not spoiler candidates. If you have someone you're really excited about, but you don't know if they can win, you can go ahead and rank that person first. And if that person doesn't get enough votes, they count it round by round until
yeah,
someone has a majority. And that means instead of these races where maybe somebody wins, but they only have 26% of the vote, you make
yeah.
sure you get a candidate that's got a consensus. And so, yeah, what I did last week was cross endorsed with State Assembly member Zoran Mamdani, who's a Democratic Socialist. He's to my left for sure. But we
Yeah.
both agree that we cannot allow disgraced, corrupt, abusive Andrew Cuomo into City Hall. And so by teaming up, he and I are, second and third in the polls. We
Mhm.
hope our voters will rank the other person second, and that one of us will then beat Andrew Cuomo and bring positive, forward-looking, progressive, effective leadership to the city, and not the disgraced politics of the past.
That's right. And you know what? We just had a mayoral election here in St. Louis, and Kara Spencer won. Nice person. I met her. She beat an incumbent, and in many ways, her number one thing she ran on was competence. It's funny how often we find people who run for a mayor, especially the largest city, like New York, but they forget that the job is simple, right? It's pick up the garbage, it's clean the streets, fix the potholes. I saw competence is one of the things you're running on, aren't you?
I mean, yes, for me, it's really a combination. I mean, I'm the city controller. I know how these agencies work and don't work. I've audited everyone. I've saved taxpayers billions of dollars. I know how to make government work better. I do also have a big, ambitious vision for what government can be and do. I've spent my life working on affordable housing. I've my kids went to New York City public schools, and just like we had a desegregation program in St. Louis, I fought to bring a desegregation program for the middle schools in my district, and they're all better as a result. This is the city with the Statue of Liberty in the harbor, with Stonewall Inn. Like, if we're going to show how inclusive multiracial democracy can work anywhere, it's going to be in New York City. And for that, you need a mayor with an ambitious, progressive vision, but also with that competence to actually get the garbage picked up and keep the neighborhood safe and deliver the good schools and childcare. And that's the campaign I'm running.
And you've been in affordable housing as long as you've been in this business, right?
Even longer. So I spent
Yeah,
15 years as an elected official. I spent 15 years before that working in two nonprofit organizations doing tenant protection, affordable housing, and community development. It's really my
yeah.
life's work.
Your whole career has been in that, and that is a constant problem in New York. And you're not alone in that. I mean, major cities across the country are facing an affordability crisis. How do you address something? It's a big bear to bite on. I mean, how do you start biting down, eating an elephant like that?
Yeah, no, it really is a big challenge. And there's tenants who are seeing their rents skyrocket. And so we have regulations here that don't, that set how much for about half our rental stock. New York's got about 3 million housing units, a third of them home ownership, a third unregulated rentals, and a third rent regulated units. And that means on those units, a city board says how much the rents can go up each year. So you work to keep those rents down. This year, I'm advocating for actually a freeze on the rents for tenants, that they not go up this year at all, because Eric Adams has raised tenants' rents 9% over the last 3 years. So keep the rents down, build a lot more housing. Part of the reason we have this problem is jobs have grown much faster than housing. So I've got a
Yeah,
plan for 500,000 homes over the next 10 years. That would sound big in St. Louis for sure, but it's big in New York as well. But
Yeah.
I've shown where to do it, and I built. When I was a city council member, I led a redevelopment effort around an old industrial canal where now 8,000 new homes are rising,
Yeah.
3,000 of them genuinely affordable to low income and working class families, and that's the kind of leadership I'll bring to City Hall.
I spent time in New York during the COVID crisis. I was the chief of staff of Frank Ryan Larkin Field Hospital up at Columbia's Baker Fieldhouse. I got a chance to spend 2 months in the city just at a very tough time. And it's people want to hear it. It's a gorgeous city. It's a beautiful city. People have such a weird idea of what New York is all about. I spent a lot of time. I had the blessing of a badge. I could go everywhere, multi-pass, and I got to spend time with the people and the city itself, and it really is a beautiful place. And they deserve much more than the chaos they've had, don't they?
They do. They really do. I think people worried the pandemic could like be the end of New York City because if
Yeah,
people, the whole idea is you want to come to a Broadway show, go to a club, work in an office with other creative people. We live in close quarters here and amazing things happen as a result. And thankfully, we can still have that. We got through the pandemic for all our differences, but we need a mayor who brings people together and makes government deliver for them.
and you had a big week. Yeah, I think people are expecting me. You got picked up by ICE in a very ridiculous,
Yeah.
shocking development. You've been going to these immigration hearings for a few weeks now to kind of see how this works. It's shocking what's happening in those courts, isn't it?
Shocking. Yeah, it really is. I mean, a couple things here. First, it's just worth remembering that, 40% of the 8 million New Yorkers are immigrants. Like this, not just an immigrant city in the past, even today. Like a million kids in New York are in mixed status households. So, like, this is standing up for the future in New York. And yeah, Donald Trump is trying to turn our constitutional democracy into a country under authoritarian rule. We
Yeah.
saw that when he sends in the National Guard in LA or arrests Senator Alex Padilla or Mayor Ras Baraka. I have been going with a simple Friends of the Court program where you go sit in and observe immigration court. And if people have their asylum seeker status stripped away, they might get grabbed by ICE agents in the elevator lobby. And so we just try to walk them out of the building. And I've been doing it a few weeks. I've walked, 5 families out with no trouble at all. And then on Tuesday, I was walking out a gentleman named Edgardo, who had just been stripped of his asylum seeker status when that, group of ununiformed, masked ICE agents descended on us, grab him, grab me, separate us. I was in detention for 4 hours. Edgardo is still in ICE detention, and thousands of folks are. They mostly don't have lawyers. They haven't had explained what's going on. They don't speak English. Like when we talk about creeping authoritarianism, it looks both like arresting elected officials, just asking for warrants or standing up for their people, and turning our immigration courts into a place of like masked, ununiformed guys who grab people and disappear them. It's a critical time to stand up for the rights that we know people need and for the rule of law.
Yeah, and people don't real. I mean, these are people trying to do the right thing, though, aren't they, Brad? I mean, that's what I think. What
Important point. Yeah.
upsets me is I have interpreters that came over. One of my interpreters was murdered in Iraq. We got his widow and children over here at 2. Mom's a citizen. We're still struggling to get his daughters the right paperwork 18 years
Yeah.
later. But these aren't people who, snuck in. They're literally reporting for their meetings. They're going to asylum court. People forget these these judges, immigration court judges. They're not part of the court system as other judges, are they? They're actually part of the other system, aren't they?
Such an important point because, of course, Trump and Pam Bondi are still talking as though they're going after violent criminals, but
No.
everyone in this immigration court checked in with Border Patrol when they came, asked for the opportunity to seek asylum, got a court date, showed up in court expecting to be able to explain to the judge why they're afraid of persecution if they're deported back to their home country. But instead of getting that opportunity to explain, they get their asylum seeker status stripped and then grabbed. And in no case was anyone that I heard. Again, these aren't criminal. It's not a criminal court.
No.
There's no reason to believe these people have, whatever, have a parking ticket. So,
Right.
yes, what they did was try to come here and ask for the opportunity to explain why they're afraid they'll be persecuted if they return. And I mean, on average, only 20 or 25% of them will be found to have a credible fear of persecution, and the others would
Yeah.
have to go back. But international law gives you that right, and to corrupt it in this way that strips your right even to present your case away, And then have you grabbed in an elevator lobby by a gang of people who don't identify themselves? Like that is like what happens in a banana republic.
Yeah.
And it's what's happening here right now.
And it's got to put, I mean, say what you will about police, it's got to put NYPD in a tough place. Uniformed police are doing, they wear uniforms, they wear badges, they have
Yeah.
numbers. And now you've got people on your streets of New York piling out of vans, unmarked vehicles without a proper uniform on. I mean, it feels to me that as a city leader, you're sitting on a powder keg that could end up in
Agreed.
some very dangerous places, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, NYPD officers, they wear uniforms, they have badges. When they interact with people, they explain why. When they're executing a warrant, they tell you why. That doesn't always make it easy,
Yeah.
but that's what the rule of law looks like, is we have
Yeah.
laws, we assign people to enforce them. And then when you have these federal agents doing none of that, look, I think part of what Trump wants to do here is escalate conflict and provoke chaos and then use that as an excuse to send the National Guard in like he did in Los Angeles. So, look, that presents a challenge for those of us who love democracy and the rule of law. We have to find ways that are nonviolent and de escalating, but also that are insistent on rights and due process. So, I value the nonviolent tradition here of bearing witness and showing up. And that's what I was doing Tuesday. I went back yesterday, and I'll be back again after Tuesday's election. And I hope other people will as well. We're just doing what's called a friend of the court program. There are a lot of ways people can show up to protect our democracy right now.
Peacefully and patriotically. I
Amen.
led a protest. I was part of the organizers for a protest, a rally in DC for veterans, Unite for Veterans. And that was our catchphrase was peacefully and patriotically. We have rights. We have a First Amendment still, and we have a way. We don't want violence. I mean, I lived in Baghdad, twice. I was stationed in Baghdad. I know what it looks like.
Yeah.
And it's funny. What's interesting about this moment too is I can't help be struck by how so many people think it won't affect them. But you're the city comptroller now, obviously largest city in the country, but you woke up one day with $80 million less in your bank accounts, right? Because
Yes.
Elon Musk sent a tweet out, right? I mean, the next morning, people probably forgot. I think it was February, right, sir?
Yeah. So, yeah, in February, Elon Musk found that the federal government had paid New York City $80 million that Congress had authorized and got mad about it and took it back because they control this federal banking clearinghouse. So, my office found it. I forced the law department into court to get it back. But I agree with you. Like, there's that old poem. First, they came for the socialists, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a socialist. And then they came for the trade unionists, and then they came for the Jews. And it feels like that right now. If they undermine the rule of law, Pam Bondi said that she's trying to liberate democratic cities from their duly elected officials. I mean,
On
that's just
camera.
another word for overthrowing democracy. And that won't go well for people in red states or for blue states if you can't count on on your legal rights and your due process. If they could come for a 50 something, white male controller who holds a US passport, they're trying to signal they're willing to kind of come for anyone. And I do think, even if you voted for Donald Trump, if you live in a red state, the Constitution matters, the rule of law matters.
Yeah, I do have to circle back. I can't let you go. I know you've been living in New York since 1990, I think. But however, you grew up here in St. Louis. Your mom was a school counselor. Your dad was a lawyer. Spoke, taught at SLU, I believe. You've written a lot about how their values shaped you. Those Midwestern roots that we both share, and then you took that to New York City. How does that shape when you arrived in New York City as a kid from St. Louis, essentially, the burbs?
Yeah.
How does that shape you? I mean, did that shape your view as you delved into a bigger city and the politics of all that?
Absolutely. First of all, shout out Parkway North High School, where
Ah,
where I went to high school, and shout out St. Louis Cardinals, which is still my deep sports fandom.
we appreciate you.
Um,
I went to Kirkwood.
and it
I
is
went to
where I
Kirkwood
learned
High.
these values and look, it's funny ways the Cardinals are like a team, they're less prima donnas historically and more
Yeah.
you build a good team. And, the values I learned is like everyone is deserving of equal rights and protection and want just affordability and safety for their kids. In New York, obviously, it's an extraordinarily diverse place with people from all around the world and people from all around the country and people who have been here for generations. And that's fun to see all the different cultures and approaches and foods and ideas. It's dynamic, but at the same time, at the end of the day, what everyone wants for their kids is a home they can afford and aren't going to get kicked out of, in a neighborhood they love and feel safe, with a good school that helps unlock their kids' potential in life, And that's why we have a democracy, is to try to build institutions that show up. You were talking earlier about the Missouri Botanical Gardens. I love that place.
Right?
We want public institutions that show the best we can be and help bring us together to do it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've been blessed to have a career working on that in New York City, and I hope the voters will elect me on Tuesday. I will say, on the debate stage last week, as I was attacking Andrew Cuomo for sexual harassment, for corruption, and for sending people to their deaths in nursing homes with COVID and lying about it, the best he could do was attack me for being from St. Louis. And I thought, you know what? If that's the best you got, bring it on.
Classic Como. It's just, it never ends with that guy. I wish, I hope, again, I'm glad you're bringing our values out there, and good, the New York values. I married a girl from New York originally. I went to West Point, so I spent a lot of quality time down there, and it's a special place in my heart for having served there too.
I'll
But
shout out here just quickly. I'm the only candidate
please,
in the race with a plan to strengthen the New York City Department of Veteran Services. Obviously, we have a ton of veterans here in New York City, and
friends that work
unfortunately,
there.
after promising to make that a effective department, Eric Adams has really neglected it. So, those are New York values also.
It is.
And
And we were there. We were up there during the JD Vance, when JD Vance showed up there, and I was with Vote Vets then, and my friend Joe Bello, who's been very involved in the New York City veterans. If you know Joe,
yeah,
probably haven't.
he's the like the main. Our veterans platform is very largely shaped by Joe's advocacy
Oh
and what he
wow!
thinks
All
needs to
right,
happen
I'm
here.
done. He's the real deal, and
Yes, he
that's
is.
wonderful here. He cares about New York. It's hard to separate the veteran from New York when you talk about Joe Bello, but it is. You have a huge veterans population, and it does matter. And I like to say a lot that we are America, and the things that solve, when you solve the problems for veterans, homelessness, medical care, housing, you're solving for everybody. We are America. It's just a microcosm of that. So I'm thrilled to have that. That's
Yeah, I
one of
mean,
your
it's both. Those
priorities.
are both the values our service members and veterans are fighting for, and a kind of like avatar of what we need to deliver to everyone.
Yeah. Well, I've taken a lot of your time, Brad. No, you're
Great.
too. Thank you
Nice
for
to
taking
talk to
time
you.
for us, man. I appreciate you taking time as you get ready for the election. Good luck. We're thrilled to have you on, and keep up the fight. It was good to see. It's always good. Look. I'm a guy. I like to see us in the fight. So getting in there matters. So thank you so much.
Great to talk to you. Thanks so much.